All right. Hi there. My name is Elizabeth and I am with Maeve Yoga. So this video, I wanted to focus on talking around, the different things people say about why they don't want to practice yoga. So for instance, I'm not flexible enough. If it has to do with your body type and your body weight, if you think it's for a specific type of person, whatever it is that's holding you back, I want to specifically talk about it here. So, number one, yoga, you don't have to be flexible to do it. I have very tight hips. I am by no means super flexible. You could argue that I'm more flexible than the average person because I've been practicing yoga for 10 years. However, I have definitely had ebbs and flows with my flexibility. For instance, back in, I think it was 2015, I injured myself in a yoga class. I pulled the muscles on the inside of both thighs at the same time in triangle pose. And that was not fun. So number one, the one thing I definitely want to emphasize to anyone who ever decides to take my class or take someone else's class is safety. Do not push yourself further than what you are comfortable doing, because that recovery phase was not fun. I wanted to keep going to class, but I found that I couldn't even open my feet wider than 2.5 feet-ish without it starting to become extremely painful. So be mindful of your body and make sure you're listening to it throughout a practice, because if you try to push it too far, you might have something bad happen, and that's not fun. The other thing with making sure that you're listening to your body is this practice is all about you. Whether you're following along with my YouTube video, whether you're following along with someone else's, whether you're in one of their live classes, whether it's on the computer or if it's actually in person, make sure you're paying attention to what you actually need versus what they're saying. So as a yoga practitioner and as a yoga teacher, I tell my students all the time that this practice is about them. So if they come to practice that evening and their body is sore and their body is tired and they just kind of want to relax, I am not going to complain if I look over and see that you're in corpse pose the entire hour. Or if we're in a pose and you're like, man, this feels great, I want to stay here longer than the 30 plus seconds that I had you stay there. Stay in that pose, whether it's a downward facing dog, whether it's the warrior poses, whether it's like child's pose. Maybe we do shoulder stand and you're like, I'm loving shoulder stand tonight, I want to stay here for another minute. Do it. Just be mindful of your body and make sure that you're not stressing yourself in a way that then is going to have negative results afterwards. Additionally, I don't get offended when I have people in my class who decide, hey, I want something more challenging. So for instance, if we're doing extended side angle and they decide, hey, rather than just having my elbow on my knee and my arm extended, I want to, bring my hand to my hip, do a half bind, maybe lower the hand down to the mat, or even do a full bind or something else. That's good with me. You know what? You wanted to amp it up, you amp it up. That is perfect. That is wonderful. Because the last thing I want as a yoga teacher is for someone to come to my class and wish they'd got to do something, and then just because I didn't say it, they didn't do it. So I hope that that is kind of a good piece of advice and word of wisdom for anyone who's watching this video and decides like, hey, I'm going to go to a class, and then they go to the class and they're like, I really wanted to have, a few more seconds in downward facing dog just to breathe. Or, hey, I loved that triangle pose. That felt great. That stretch along the side and my legs. I wish we had stayed there a little longer. Stay there longer. Add that pose. Do whatever feels good in your body. And if the yoga teacher is offended by it, I don't care if someone gets offended by me saying this. They're not a good teacher. Because yoga is all about you. Yoga is not about me telling you what to do. It's about me saying, here's some suggestions, and then you take it and do what you like. So that's my hard and fast, how I feel about it. What else? You'll find too that certain styles of yoga might be more accessible or more enjoyable for you as compared to other styles. So as you're going through my channel, you'll notice that for the most part, I use a hatha style practice, which is H-A-T-H-A. And that involves more focusing on the connection of the mind-body breath and taking it a little slower, staying in poses longer, breathing through it. Every once in a while, every video I do incorporate some type of flow where, like, you know, we're doing those seated upward salutes, but I don't very often include an actual vinyasa flow that might be like something like a sun salutation. And the main reason I do that is because I know what's accessible in my body and where I can slowly move through something and actually feel the stretch as compared to trying to get to the next pose. So if you do find that you go to a vinyasa class and you're like, man, it is too difficult to keep up with this, I'm not even feeling the stretch, like I just feel like I'm flinging my body around, try out a slower class. Or if you try my class and you're like, this is way too slow, I feel like I'm just losing focus and not enjoying this, find a faster class. There's nothing wrong with that. And just make sure that you find something that you're comfortable with, because it's not fun to force yourself into something and then realize, hey, I spent all of this time doing something that didn't serve me. Make it serve you. So, yeah, I would say that's about it. That wraps up kind of, you know, making sure that you make this practice about you, because yoga is for everyone. There is not a single person that will not benefit from a yoga practice. It's just a matter of being patient, finding the right type of practitioner, and specifically having the independence on your own and the confidence to say, hey, it is my body, and I either cannot do that, will not do that, do not want to do that, or, hey, I want even more out of this, and then going ahead and taking that step and doing it. And I would say if you ever are in an actual in-person class, the only other comment I would make about if you choose to do something that they're not saying, try to make sure that you're not doing it in a disruptive way. So for instance, if you're kind of in the front of the room and you're deciding to totally do your own thing that entire class, that might be disruptive. But for instance, you know, if they're saying, let's do a triangle pose, and then when they're ready to transition out of it, you say, hey, I kind of want to turn this into a half moon for a second, and then come back out of it, do it. And if you are extra concerned that adding something extra like that will offend that teacher and you just want to make sure it's okay, because you don't want to mess up the flow of the class, talk to them ahead of time. Say, hey, if you were to do something like this and I were to decide to add something to make it more for me, how do you feel about that? And maybe they'll say something along the lines of, just go to the back of the room, like have your mat toward the back. And then that way others don't watch you and then think that they're supposed to do that as well. So I hope these tips work for you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Thank you. Love you. Bye.